Assalamualaikum and good morning and welcome to everyone. My name is Johan Abdul Razak, and on behalf of Badan Warisan Malaysia, I would like to welcome everyone to this our first session in our series, in our special series entitled The Diverse Origins of Kuala Lumpur, which is being held in conjunction with KL Festival. So this morning is our first installment, and we would just like to acknowledge our sponsors, Think City, who has been very generous in supporting us, in enabling us to put together this talks. Yeah? So before I go on about the talk, a bit of housekeeping. Let me, if I could get the housekeeping stuff out of the way. I would just like to remind everyone to please put your phones on silent mode and to please refrain from using flash photography. We will be recording this session and it will be uploaded to social media. Again, our ability to record is actually a big thank you to our sponsors who have enabled us to purchase the equipment to record our events. Yeah. Now, for your information, the toilets are actually located not just on this floor, also upstairs and also downstairs. Yeah. We will have a Q&A session at the end, and I think there's a water dispenser at the back there, which you can help yourself. So, yeah. And if I can go straight on to the contents of the talk. Just give me a minute. Yeah. So for our first session this morning, the title is KL Trails and Tales. So I'm really honored to have my ex-colleagues from Badan Warisan Malaysia. Both Mariana and Maganjeet, they really need no introduction. They were both former council members, and things. It's a bit incestuous actually, because Mariana also works for Think City upstairs. Her office is upstairs. Yeah. So anyway, a bit about this talk. The talk shares selected stories which were uncovered through walking the streets, walking the city, researching its streets, and revisiting familiar landmarks. And the session brings together some forgotten memories of Kuala Lumpur's buildings, neighbourhoods, and public spaces. It also offers a journey through stories discovered along the way, some hidden in archives, some found on the ground, and others revealed through walking, observing, and asking new questions. And a bit about the speakers. Both Mariana and Maganjeet are founders of Heritage Output Lab, and they are independent researchers of Malaysian and Southeast Asian history. And they have co-authored numerous books, and I would say that the ones that, it's almost like a dictionary for me is the Kuala Lumpur street names. Every now and then we will have to reach out for their book actually. So, thank you, yeah. And also other titles like Towns of Malaya, between the Bay of Bengal and the Java Sea. And on that note, actually, I would like to invite our speakers to start off. Thank you very much. Over to you.
Thank you, Johan. Okay. Good morning, everyone. I'm Mariana. Yes. And we're from Heritage Output Lab. First, we'd like to thank Badan Warisan Malaysia for including us in the series, The Diverse Origins of Kuala Lumpur. And then many thanks to the organizers of Kuala Lumpur Festival. And thank you to all of you, our old friends and new friends who have gathered here today for KL Trails and Tales. Festival is Memory and Tomorrow. So what our looks at, why are certain places significant? And it's because of the associated memories that we attach to them, whether good, bad, personal, or shared. And these places are what make us who we are today. And in tracing some of the earlier memories from earlier generations, we've found sites that still exist and some that have turned into tales. And then the question is, do we pay enough attention to the places or the buildings that we occupy, the streets that we pass by every day, and the histories around us? Do we really know Kuala Lumpur? So we've been working on Kuala Lumpur studies for more than 10 years. We still don't know. We still don't know. Every time we meet, there are still new information that continues to impress us. And we have a few to share today, and we hope you'll find our session useful. So let's start with the building, with this image. This photograph was taken in 1928, and if you're familiar with this site, it's taken from the Masjid Jamek compound. Probably, if you take the LRT, this is probably the same angle, right? And then you have the old HSBC that was built 1915, the Embankment Road, the old Market Square, you can see it at the back, and then the Mercantile Bank, the old Mercantile Bank. So we are here. We're not in that building, but we are at this site, the same site. And the building was called Patterson, Simons and Company Limited. It was owned by Patterson Company Limited. It was like an import-export agency, sold merchandise, agricultural tools, equipment, and at this site, Wisma Maran today, the address is number 28, Old Market Square. But back in the day, they had an older address, which is number 1 and 3 Old Market Square. So the numbering systems have changed, and this is also one of the challenges that we encounter when we're trying to study an area. So you can see that, well, maybe you can't see, but I'll tell you. On the left, along this block, it's all the odd numbers, and then on the opposite block there, the numbers were the even numbers. But now it has all changed. So that's where we are, and this is an 1889 map. So as you know, I'm sure all of you know, I think everyone, this is quite common knowledge. It would have taken maybe 3 days to travel from Klang to Kuala Lumpur. And then as you meet the juncture, let me just test, does this work? No, okay. Never mind, I have to stand. Sorry, because the pointer doesn't work on this screen. So as you meet this juncture, the confluence, the river's too shallow for heavier boats to pass. So everyone who wants to go up north would disembark here, and then they'll go to the mines through Ampang Street or Petaling Street, Pudu Street, where all the major mines were. And so we are somewhere, no, sorry, this one is actually, we are somewhere here. And this site is really important because this Cross Street is where the main river entrance used to be. Okay, so what I'd like to share, my short session, my first session, it's about the embankment or the tales of the embankment. Okay, so this is Kuala Lumpur between 1882 to 1884. Very green. This is kalau pergi Taman Negara macam ni lah. Suatu ketika dulu Kuala Lumpur macam Taman Negara. And then so it was very green. And then this is actually the approach towards Market Street. At the end here, just after this building is the Market Street Bridge, which is Lebo Pasar Besar, right there. Actually, this location we are today is very good to explain because you can get your bearings right. So what happened to this riverbank, the natural banks? We have some the natural banks. We have some hints, a glimpse from a letter from a guy called Dola Kuantong. I assume they're dari Kuantong lah. Right? All right. So in this letter, he says he is offering a service to clear the vegetation along the river of Klang between the Market Street Bridge, which he refers to as Jambatan Kuala Lumpur, until Damansara. So Damansara to Brickfields is about 15 miles that we know. So Brickfields to Market Street Bridge maybe another 1.5 miles, maybe, yeah? So 16, 17 miles. And then he offered, I think it's 2,950 lah, can be 12 ringgit kan? But that was a dot. So potong kayu kiri kanan bukannya 5 depa sehingga sampai bersih itu sungai. So 5 depa is about 30 feet. So in 1884, they start clearing all the vegetation, ready to maybe develop or straighten the river. Okay, so we are somewhere here in this 1882-1884 photo. And you can see very clearly, okay, this portion here, yeah, this is Market Street, and then the bridge is somewhere here, and then this portion here, we're gonna zoom in, and you can see the riverside, natural riverside tropical living still existed, houses on stilts, along the river. This is Klang River, and then you got the Java Street Mosque, the original one, still, like very stands out with its bumbung meru, its pyramidal roof. And in this 1890 photo, so by 1889, 1890, they've already marked that side of the river where Sultan Abdul Samad building is today as the new town of Kuala Lumpur. They filled up the swampy area, created a parade ground. And so this is a view from what is now Bangunan Sultan Abdul Samad towards the east side of the river. And this structures here, the similar atap timber houses on stilts were still there. And the Java Street Mosque, actually you can see this pyramid, it's also still there, and all the greenery, the Malay burial ground, the Masjid Jami has not been constructed. So from this photograph, I want you to focus to this block. You can see there's 2 windows, one door, and then it's a 3-story block, and we are actually here. So this is the building that was on this side before the Patterson-Simon building was constructed. Okay. So there is many layer here. Before this building, I don't know what was here. And then, so there is also another angle of this building. The elements that you saw, the 2 windows, doors, the block, and the shape of the roof is apparent here. It's the same building. And this photo is from 1897. And by then, you can see that the embankment has changed. The riverside has changed. It's now more walled up. There are a lot of these toilets, outhouse toilets. Because remember, toilets used to be outside of the house, yeah? And then if by the river, you just go to the river and then ploop, ploop, ploop. Begitulah. Begitulah. So you just imagine coming from the riverside to Kuala Lumpur. And some have these like access staircases right straight into their units or straight into their blocks. So if we look at this side closely, yeah, you'll see these river steps going up onto Cross Street, now Jalan Silang, into the Medan Pasar area. We're just right next door to it. So maybe later, after the session, you can go down and observe how much it has changed. Definitely the tanga's not there anymore. And there has been a lot of descriptions, well, not a lot, but several descriptions of this arrival point, landing post, trading post, landing stage. But we've not had any other visuals or any other records that describe it clearly. But you can see that the staircase is similar to, the Masjid Jami steps, right? So you imagine there were a lot of landing steps along the river to people's houses or properties. There were also a lot of bridges because they had to cross. And we found some drawings related to a place called Market Quay, but we don't know where Market Quay is. Huh? We don't know yet. But so there are like hints. So you can see like in this drawing, it's a similar structure setup, right? And then when we looked at the 1889 map, there's a similar entry. So if you're interested to study this with us, you're more than welcome. So these are things that give clues, but because there's no physical evidence, these are now just tales, tales of the river entrances. Other areas that had embankments, So from 1897 onwards, they've started reclaiming the foreshore of the river because they wanted more space. You saw the photo just now. This is actually at Java Street, which is Tun Perak today, and then the location of the Java Street Mosque we mentioned just now. So the description for this area between the Java Street and Cross Street here, Sanitary Board said, adalah state engineer make a report. Dirty, insanitary, slum-like, and then underneath their houses, a lot of holes, water is all trapped underneath, and it carries some danger to health because banyak nyamuk lah, kan? Masa tu dia tak tahu ada dengue lagi. So the foreshore reclamation allowed the sanitary board to extend and clear up. Actually, they even proposed to the Resident General that all this is bought over so that everything can be demolished and then cleared. The description was, these are just typical Chinese shop houses with some rickety wooden structures at the back. The condition is bad, but it's just as the same as Penang and Singapore. So that was basically it. It's bad, but there are other places like this also. So the lots back then were different, and then they estimated it to cost about 500,000 to buy over and fill up. But the estimate for the redevelopment is that after everything is cleared, maybe there's about 40,000 square feet at $7.50 per square feet. It's about 300,000, and then maybe we can offer a company to buy the whole block. So we're not sure what happened, but definitely much later, the blocks, the units, the lots were arranged differently, and then all the different banks or department stores bought, occupied blocks instead of all those smaller lots. So the embankment road was proposed in 1903. There are sections to show how the embankment could be constructed. And then there are also other style of embankment walls, and this one is actually along the Gombak River, and it's very similar to the one at Masjid Jame'. Also, there's a section drawing if any of the architects or engineers are interested. Now, okay, so this is the one I said along the Masjid Jame' perimeter, and then this was the one that was built along Embankment Road. So there are just like a lot of photographs. The railings were different. Now it's all glass railing, and you can see that it's still a back of house, but people are using the road. And by 1914, 1915, the HSBC and the John Little building were completed. So it totally changed the atmosphere because their buildings addressed the design. It was designed in such a way that the frontage was addressing Embankment Road. And then you have all the 5-foot walkway and then the colonnades. And this building was a shophouse lot before Oriental building was constructed. Now this is the LRT station, Pasar Seni LRT station, yeah? Okay. So in 1940s onwards, they've extended the Embankment Road down to meet the Sulaiman Bridge. So they had to cut through what was the old VI, which became a technical school, high school Stapa, actually. I mean, it was a technical school, a high school, and then I think because of this exercise in the 1950s, eventually that high school moved to Stapa, and it's called Stapa High School. And then some of the buildings had to be demolished. Some are still there if you go. And then, so after it was extended, you could walk from our side to Central Market area, because before that it was all like closed up. So the embankment again here, it has a very different design. This has like a castle-like motif, and then the railway yard was opposite. Okay, now go next. Ada stuck. Ada, okay. And then because don't forget that Central Market was a market, and then it was the main node, and there would have been a lot of spillover into the streets. So that is also why this area was very activated, not just at the market area. As you approach, as you walk towards the market, there would have been a lot of hawker activities, small shops, and this was the environment. And then this is a photo from the 1940s, late 1940s. We are here, and then you can see the whole embankment road, continuous until belakang sana. And this is also a good photo. This is from the 1950s. You could see the market square with the clock tower. We're here, and the environment was on this side. It was already compact, and then on this side is a bit more modern. I mean, like it was more formal, except for the railway yard, which Magan will be talking about later. Okay, this is a photograph from DBKL. It's a photograph of their workers mantling or tarring the road. And this is maybe a lot of the people a little bit senior than me would recall this area as Jalan Benteng. After Merdeka, Embankment Road was renamed as Jalan Benteng, and it was a very popular outdoor eatery just along the strip. And this was the environment. Of course, it was, I think it was very localized, but in terms of hygiene and sanitary, it was not managed well. So eventually, DBKL decided to clear this area from that activity and move them to Jalan Bunos, the Sri Bunos food court. So that food court is still there. You're lagging. Okay. And then this is from the 1980s, and by then the Wisma Maran was already constructed. And there are still smaller huts, smaller covered stalls towards the bridge. And then this is the embankment today. And the embankment road itself, it's a bit more green. There are pop-up stalls during lunchtime. So there's a little bit of activity. And then Hari Bulan Puasa, there'll be like a food bazaar on this side. Yes. So I think that's the Embankment Road, Jalan Benteng. So I'm going to pass the session to Magan.
This is something that will be very familiar to all of you. If you're not sure where this is, just go out and look at the river outside. Just go to the window there and take a look. So this is the confluence of two rivers, the Klang River and the Gombak River. And Kuala Lumpur started here. This was the birthplace of Kuala Lumpur. And so when, like Mariana pointed out, the steps where when the boats are landed, they would go on the steps and they will go into Kuala Lumpur. So when people started settling here, the Chinese located themselves to the east of the river. Now coming from here, so we considered this east and that's west. So the Chinese located themselves on the east. The Muslim populations were on the north. And there was also a sizable Indian population in the north together with the Muslim population. When the British moved their capital from Klang to Kuala Lumpur in 1880, they decided to move to the west of the river. They wanted to be away from the Asians, right? So the what you call the civic center developed on this side, and that's the Bangunan Sultan Abdul Samad area. That one it developed over there, and today I'm going to focus on that civic center. On the civic center, I'm not going to go into very much detail. I'm not going to, because I don't want it to be too technical. So I'm going to keep it light. Just some stories that you all might enjoy. If you notice over here, and no, this don't work, the trees over here, as you can still see the trees over there. Let's take a look at those in more detail. this is how the trees look like today. And in the 1930s, this was how it looked like. Now, we don't know when this was planted, but most likely the early 1900s. So these trees have been around for 100 years. They are our living heritage, and that's why I want to highlight them, and we should take care of them. The Malays called these trees pukul lima. Pukul lima. You know why? Because its leaves were closed around that time. So they call it pukul lima. But these trees, commonly they are rain trees. They're known as rain trees because the leaves also close when it's an overcast day, indicating that it's going to rain. So that's why it was known as rain trees. The trees are not native to Malaysia, but native to Central and South America. They provide very good shade. As you can see, very obviously, they provide very good shade, and that was why the British brought them here to provide shade in plantations as well as roadways. Now, see this bridge over here? You can see this bridge over here where a lot of people makan angin. This bridge was known as Market Street Bridge because it carried Market Street, today Lebo Pasar Besar. A very important bridge because it connected the east and the west of the river. Before the British came here, what was on the west side of the river there's nothing much, very little activity, just a few vegetable gardens. The activity was located on the east. So there really was not much need for a bridge, and the bridge at that time was just a few tree logs tied together, and that sufficed very well, but unfortunately they were very easily washed away as well. So after British moved here, there was more activity. You know, the market and the shops are located on the east, the civic center on the right. So the bridge needed to be more sturdy. So they contracted out the bridge to a man named San Apeng. And if you read the records, he was a very famous contractor, popular contractor at that time. And he was contracted in 1884 to build a wooden bridge. This is how the bridge looked like. You can see the bridge over here. And it also shows you the houses, the typical houses around 1884, around that area. So then what happened this was in 1884. In 1886, they built the railway line. The railway line, and with the railway line came a lot more traffic. The goods yard was just located at the back of the railway station. The railway station was located at Market Street, at the corner of Market Street on the Dataran Merdeka side. So of course, you know, much more traffic, a lot of goods being taken out of goods yard, a lot of movement up and down. And a very enterprising a businessman from Singapore named Lim Chu, he actually offered the government to buy all the land from Market Street Bridge to Gombak Bridge, because he knew that after the train arrived, the price of the land would go up. But his proposal was rejected. The government didn't agree for him to buy the land. But another equally enterprising gentleman by the name of Lok Yu, he bought land on both the east and west side of Market Street, on both sides of Market Street. So now, because the wooden bridge was no longer suitable, they had to build a new bridge, and the contract for the new bridge was given to a company known as Harvard Erskine and Company, and it was an iron lattice girder bridge. And this is the time when the bridge was under construction. So this is basically, well, here, down there, right? It's basically down there. This bridge, right from the beginning, gave a lot of problems. Although it was completed in 1888, it was repaired again almost immediately after it needed repairs. And throughout its existence, it required a lot of repairs, and the government had to spend a lot of money doing that. So what they did was, they had no choice but to build another bridge. Also of the same type, also an iron lattice girder bridge, which was contracted out to Federated Engineering Company in 1900. And this was the bridge. Here you see, this one is the goods yard that Mariana mentioned earlier. This is a goods shed, and I'm sorry if those over here can't see, but so the Supreme Court displaced the Dobbies. There were in this area, Dobbies used to wash their clothes in the river. Oh, Dobbies used to wash their clothes in the river, and they used to, hang them dry outside. So the Supreme Court put an end to their activities over here. Talking about the bank, right? I just remembered the story. It became the Standard Chartered when it first was established. It was the Chartered Bank of India, Australia, and China. It was the first bank in Kuala Lumpur. It was the first bank. So it moved to this building in 1891 or 92, around that time. But the story that I'm going to relate, a story that I just remembered, is that, when the new government officers, Banganan Sultan Abdul Samad, when the foundation stone was laid in 1884, the governor who did the laying of the foundation, he took yen. One of the items put in the cavity under the foundation stone was a yen, Japanese yen. And so some very naughty people have asked what was he doing with the yen in his pocket. And they speculated that, hey, could it be that he was visiting Japanese brothels, and that's why he had a yen? And that is how urban legends are formed, because that's not true. The yen was legal tender at that time. So you had the Japanese yen, you had Spanish dollar, the Mexican dollar. They were all legal tenders. The Straits dollar was only introduced in 1898, around that time. So if anybody tells you that story, tell them no, it's an urban legend, okay? That we don't know. But it's and what was there? I think Mariana showed this picture earlier as well. And it is the same picture as it's actually also taken in 1884. It's just a continuation of the earlier picture that you saw. That one has been colorized, so it might look a bit different. But let me come here, yeah? Oops, no, I'll be blocking. Okay. Yeah. You see at the corner, that's Market Street over there. That's Market Street. The Banganan Sultan Abdul Samad, the shanty row we saw earlier. So it's all there. So it's just a continuation of that same photo. And over here, something wrong with the, okay, never mind. Over here, where the blue arrow is on top, that was the house of Tambu Sami Pillay. Yeah, he was staying there. And the government, when they wanted to build the railway line, they took over the land, and they compensated him with land on Batu Road, Jalan Tuanku Abdul Rahman, where he built the first brick house on Batu Road. So then, okay, so you see over here, the railway station, or the railway line was inaugurated in 1886. This photo is from 1889. And this is the railway station over here. Right? You can see the railway station. You can barely make out the railway station, but it was there. Then there was a goods yard over on the other side. At the back was the goods yard. Notice this building over here. This one, just now I talked about the first post office, right? The double-story post office. That's the building. Yeah, and you can see how that post office looked like. And if you notice the top and the bottom, you see the tree at the side? See this tree? And that tree, they are the same, it's still there. So 4 years later, the tree is still surviving. And that's where the Chartered Bank was located, where the tree is. And yeah, I'm reminded of another story that right now the post office is that KL Gallery, right? And the KL Gallery during the war, just before the war in 1940s, it was taken over by the Post Office Savings Bank. And the Post Office Savings Bank, so during the war, 1941, during December, Christmas Eve, they were all the workers in the bank were very busily taking all the accounts, the journal entries and everything. They were updating it, and then they completed their work at around midnight, around 12 o'clock. They loaded it onto trucks to send off to Singapore because then they knew the Japanese were coming, right? So they wanted to keep all that data safe. What happened was on December 26, 41, Japanese, there was siren. They knew that they were the Japanese were attacking. And so the workers, they ran to the shelter, bomb shelter, which was located right over here, where the, what do you call that? Persekutuan, the Wisma Persekutuan is the federal building. Yeah, the federal house, the federal house, Rumah Persekutuan. It was an open land at that time, and there was a bomb shelter there. So they managed to run to safety, and the building was bombed. That printing building, the building that was here, KL Gallery, that building was bombed. Unfortunately, one security guard died. But yeah, so I got distracted. We come back to the railway. So this is the first railway station. This is how, yeah, Mariana found this just yesterday. So that's the location of the train station. And this is the goods yard. So this we saw from I forgot to point it out, but we saw it from the bridge earlier on. A tin shed, an engine shed, a store, a carriage shed, and a tank. The railway station moved to its current location in 1892, and so the space then was taken up by building an administrative building for the workers of the Selangor Railways. And then the Federated Malay States Railway was formed in 1891, and so more space was required, and this building was no longer sufficient, so they built a new building. This building, which survives until today, it was completed in 1905, and that's the Museum Textile over here, so you'll be familiar with this building. Okay, now just a few random stories. If you all may have come across this as you walk along, as you explore. Those who haven't, go down and explore that area over there. It's just located somewhere here. This is a replica of a time capsule. The original of this is located on level 1, on the ground floor of DBKL Menara 1. It was launched in 2022, and in it was a letter written by the then mayor, Tan Sri Mahadi, right? Tan Sri Datuk Mahadi, yeah. And he wrote a letter to the future mayor. So we don't know the contents. He wrote a letter. This was launched on the Kuala Lumpur's golden anniversary. Kuala Lumpur, as you know, became a city in 1972. So in 1922, it celebrated its golden anniversary. So when it celebrates its diamond jubilee in 1947, what am I talking about? 2047. I'm really in the past. 2047. That letter will be opened and read out by the then mayor. So so this is going to be there for another 25 years. Yeah, we'll be old ladies. I'll be an old lady. Okay, what's the deal with this fountain? Okay, what's the deal with this fountain? I'm talking about this today because there's a lot of what is wrong, a lot of wrong information on the internet. So I wanted to correct that. In 1887, Queen Victoria celebrated her Golden Jubilee. In 1887, Queen Victoria celebrated her Golden Jubilee. And I mean, there was a lot of activities going on, dinners, there's games and everything, but the local population of Kuala Lumpur, they wanted to put up a permanent structure to celebrate her coronation or her jubilee, her golden jubilee. So they proposed that a fountain be built. And they said they will collect the money from the community, be paid by subscription. They took the proposal to the government agreed, and the government said they will top up dollar for dollar what was collected. And they collected 3,100, and the money was handed over to the government. Then come 1893, no sign of the fountain. Right, so the fountain committee, they had formed a committee. The fountain committee wrote to the resident, the British resident, explaining what had transpired in 1887 and saying that by then, by 1893, there had been piped water. Piped water had been built, which was not available in 1887. And so they said that because of the piped water, they feel that the construction cost will be much less than it would have been if they had installed it in 1887. So they said they want the excess money to transfer to a charitable cause. And eventually the Victoria Institution was selected as the charitable cause, and the excess money was to be donated to Victoria Institution. So here are the signatures to that letter. And the signatures of the fountain committee. You have Tambu Sami Pillay, you have Tambi Abdullah, you have Lok Yu, and you have Yap Kwan Singh. So they formed the fountain committee. So we don't know what happened. The archives are silent on what happened between 1893 and 1896. But at some point, they must have sent a purchase order to Dalton and Company to buy that fountain. Dalton and Company, today you may know it as Royal Dalton. They survive until today. That's the same Dalton and Company. In 1888, they had built another fountain as well, celebrating Queen Victoria's Golden Jubilee. So this was in Glasgow, and it's been installed in Glasgow. Not sure if it's still there, but and maybe that's why they were selected for another fountain. So the fountain arrived the fountain, they dispatched the fountain in 1896. It arrived in the beginning of the year. And then in September, it was installed. And the installation was contracted out to Riley Hargraves and Company. You see some of the records. There are many different other versions of how this fountain came to be. And one of the versions is that it was a memorial to a police inspector named Steve Harper. Steve Harper was very popular. He died in 1896, and indeed, fund for a memorial, permanent memorial for him was also initiated. And maybe that's why people have got the wrong idea that this fountain was for him. But the money collected for his fund was eventually donated also to Victoria Institute, but to buy books for poor children. So let's take a look at the fountain more closely. So fountain in 1920s and the fountain today. Notice there are some creatures over there, creatures around it. They are missing from the fountain over here. And I'm not sure why, still trying to track down why and when those creatures disappeared. There is another photo from 1957, the Merdeka year, that doesn't have those creatures as well. And let's see, some of you may know George Peet. He was a correspondent of for the Straits Times, based in Malaysia, and he wrote his recollections. And in 1931, he said, "This Victoria fountain is a perfect example of all that's worst in Victorian art." Right, and in the same article, he was also speculating that the fountain was built by the Chinese community, and they couldn't remember whether it was for the Golden Jubilee or the Diamond Jubilee, because it was installed after the Diamond Jubilee. And then he continues to say, "Can we discreetly put this unpleasing relic in a less conspicuous place?" quite rude, but I think it's quite nice. Um, Incidentally, they did try to, they did want to relocate the fountain. They wanted to relocate it to, you know where the Bangkok Bank building was? Bangkok building? And there's a triangle there, right? They wanted to relocate it there, but the resident to, you know where the Bangkok Bank building was? Bangkok building? And there's a triangle there, right? They wanted to relocate it there, but the resident said no, because he wanted that place to be more airy. And also he was scared that if they move it there, the fountain might get spoiled and not work. But it was moved when they built Dataran Merdeka, just a little bit. It was moved a little bit to make space for Dataran Merdeka, and they didn't have problem moving it. So, we cannot ignore the dog. When we talk about that area, we cannot ignore the dog, right? And I think almost everybody would know that Selangor Club was known affectionately, is still known affectionately as the spotted dog. How did the spot names, and I'm sure you also have heard about the story of Theodora Sayers, the wife of Captain Harry Sayers, who was the chief police, the chief the commissioner, chief commissioner of police. You've heard how her Dalmatians, she used to park her Dalmatians outside the Selangor Club while she went inside to have tea or whatever with her friends. But is that the real story? There are also whispers, which I'm sure you've also heard, that it was snobbery. Spotted dog was because the club was spotted with Asians, right? Spotted. But there's a twist here. Arthur Kaiser, who was the private secretary to Frank Swettenham for a while, he wrote his, and this is when I need this, he wrote his memoirs in 1922. He published them in 1992. He was the secretary in 1889. He says that he and a friend were at the Selangor Club, and they were waiting for their turn at the billiards table. But it was, and just as the billiard table was freed up and they were going to take their turn, two gentlemen of rough exterior and who were railway workers, when they pushed their way, drunkard as well, and they pushed their way and got the table ahead. So in Arthur Kaiser's own words, I restrained my companion from expressing his resentment, remarking that frequenters of the Spotted Dog pub must accept the company as they found it. The name stuck, and the Spotted Dog it is today. So Arthur Kaiser claims credit for giving the club the name Spotted Dog. Now that's a hint of a snobbery in this as well. And if you look at a newspaper article from 1896, it says, earlier on it says that people, whenever somebody new comes to KL, they will take them to the dog. And they said this nickname is not unmeaning. On the contrary, it is strikingly and peculiarly expressive of all sorts and conditions of men who make up its members. So they are saying that, not specifically referring to Asians, but referring to all sorts of men. It's not exclusive. They allow everybody in the club. But there is another tale that needs to be told. And here you have Arthur Kaiser again. And I forgot the year, but never mind. 1930-something. A friend of Arthur Kaiser, Arthur Kaiser had passed away in 1924. A friend of him wrote to a newspaper in London, and he said that the Spotted Dog was given the name because at that time, the Selangor Club, they had a writing pad, and the crust on the writing pad was a tiger, and they even drew the image of the tiger in the newspaper. This is how the tiger looked like on the Selangor Club notepad. And this Arthur Kaiser's friend said that Arthur Kaiser very sarcastically remarked that it looks more like a polka-dotted dog than the majestic striped cat, and that is how Selangor Club got its name. What do you call that? The Spotted Dog. But why did that disappear? Oh, I'm going the other way. Okay, now how did the Theodora's Sayers Dalmatians come to the picture? I traced it to Edith Stratton. Edith Stratton came to Kuala Lumpur in 1898 as the first prime minister of the girls English girls' school in Kuala Lumpur. And then she published her memoirs in 1954, and she mentions this story. And incidentally, she's also the culprit who mentioned the fountain that was attributed to Steve Harper. So she has her remember. So she's the one who said that she heard the story that this is named after Theodora's Dalmatians. But then there is a newspaper article in 1958 that says that the Dalmatian story has been refuted. So take your pick. Whichever story you want, that's it. And Spotted Dog it's become iconic to Selangor Club. So there we go. And with that, I'm tired. I return it back to Mariana.
Thank you very much, Magan. And
We're not done yet.
please
Oh,
continue.
thank you. Magan's going to continue later. Yeah. Oh, okay. Maybe that's easier. All right. So taking cue from Magan's explanation about the Selangor Club, the building in the foreground is the back of the Selangor Club. And this is a photo of 1897. And I would like to talk about the building I've circled there, the old church of Bukit Nanas, the St. John's Church. So it was very visible. It is, I'm claiming it, the oldest church building in town. It's not the first church that was established. I think the St. Mary's was established earlier, 1880, at another site. But the building at the Dataran Merdeka was built in 1894. This one was built much earlier. So the history starts with, boleh ke? Actually, I'm not sure where to point it. Maybe next. Thank you, Shada. Okay, the history starts actually way earlier, 1883. Father Letassier, a French guy, came and he was tasked to start a Roman Catholic church. And then the Roman Catholics of Kuala Lumpur, led by Mr. Klein, who lived around Klein Street, and then he was also very interested in museology, right? He and the other Roman Catholic government officers proposed to the government, like, okay, we have a small Roman Catholic community. We would like a place where we can practice our faith. We need a site to do our worship. And they applied for land at Bukit Nanas. So in the other series of this talk, I think the other speakers will be talking about Bukit Nanas in the earlier period. I'm starting from 1880s onwards because the period before that's a bit complicated. So they were eventually allowed to have, they were granted a piece of land. It became 5 acres, yeah, and this was granted by Sultan Abdul Samad at the cost of $1, just for the transaction. So we found the deeds, and in this photograph of 1888, after they've reclaimed parts of Malacca Street, you can see the church in the middle, up here. From here lagi senang. There, and you see the pediment, right? At that point, it didn't have wings. It only had the nave. The nave was constructed first in, I think, completed in 1886, 1888, somewhere there. And then the wing was added later in 1910s. Now, when I said they acquired the site much earlier, 1883, 1885, from the government, there was actually a wooden structure, but that caught on fire. Poor Father Letassier built the house and then built the church, Tabaka Pula. So he befriended, he managed to get some funds, and then this church, brick church, was built. So it's older than Bangunan Sultan Abdul Samad, because Bangunan Sultan Abdul Samad was completed in 90s, 1897. And it has just been restored. So if you drive up Bukit Nanas, you'll see the building there. And we go back to the Engbangment side, where cross street, yeah. This is the HSBC building, and the road that you see is Ampang Street, and you can see the old church just on top of the hill. It has, that commanding vista. Today you can't see it because it's blocked by the Ming building, but it does make sense why it was there, right? So it was not secluded. It was on top of the hill, and it was visible. It was a landmark of Kuala Lumpur. Okay, and then this is also Ampang Street. It goes up, and you can see this is already the 1910s. St. John's Institution was already built. The technical school was already built. I'll elaborate about that much later. But what's important, you can see the old church. And then there's a mark number 7. That's actually the old fire station at Jalan Gereja. Now, Jalan Gereja, this was Jalan Gereja in the 1910s. The fire station, the Jalan Gereja actually led straight to the river. Because remember I said every area had its own landing stage, whether it's in a staircase form or a jetty form. So from that landing stage along Klang River, you can still see the road there because it's now behind the Chartered Bank. You go straight up from the side of the river, and then it'll lead you to the church. Some people said it might have been named Church Street, or Jalan Gereja, after the Tamil Methodist Church closer to the river, but that building was built much later after the road was named. So this road leads up to the hill towards the St. John's Church. And then number 7 there is the is the Bomba Station. Now the Bomba Station actually had a nice facade, and then the back was just was just normal. We owe the formation of Selangor Fire Brigade to Mr. Henry Franklin Bellamy. If you're familiar with Jalan Bellamy Ikan Bakar, that road is named after him. He did not like ikan bakar. I don't think so. Maybe he did. I'm starting a tale. Tahu tak? Bellamy tu suka makan ikan bakar. That's why ada ikan bakar situ. No, not true. But there were so many fire incidents in Kuala Lumpur. I think every few months there would be a major fire. So that's why the fire station was in the middle of town. Eventually in the 1950s, they cleared it up, flattened the building, and then moved the fire station to Shaw Road, Jalan Hang Tua. So if you know of the Bomba Station, it's quite prominent, right? At Jalan Hang Tua, the history actually started here. Another character another individual that is highly associated with the Selangor Fire Brigade is this Robert Charter. Robert Charter took over Bellamy's position as the superintendent of Fire Brigade. And if you remember the Proud Lock case, what's her name? Ethel Proudlock. Proudlock is the name of her husband. Originally, her name before she got married was Ethel May Jessie Charter. Yes. So she was the daughter to the. He was a clerk of work, but he was also the big boss of the fire brigade. Anyway, that's just a side story, not a tale. True. All right. So we go up the hill, and then this is the old church. For the longest time, the portico actually caught fire in the 1950s, and then for the longest time, this building was without a portico, but it was just reconstructed. And then on the top left is Father H.C. Letassier. Like I said, he was a French priest. He came to Kuala Lumpur, maybe spoke a bit of English, I don't know. But he was very passionate about literature, about arts. Sorry, I now remember. He actually spoke Chinese very fluently. Yes, he did speak Chinese very fluently. And he had this black and white Batak pony called Babu. So there are a lot of stories, fond stories about his pony. And this pony, he would ride, go into the ulu areas, to the rural areas, Kajang, Semenyih, to preach to the community and also to the Orang Asli. And then he befriended Go Angi. So Go Angi is the contemporary of Lok Yu and Ya Aloy, about that same period. But he was like more like Lord of Kajang, Semenyih, that side. Because everyone like focus, oh, Ya Aloy. No. Ya Aloy did not control everywhere. It's just Kuala Lumpur. There were other prominent, I would say Lord lah, prominent leaders, kapitan, yeah, prominent kapitan, businessmen, just as successful in other areas. So Go Angi was the guy. And if you look at his influence, I think Kajang is most apparent. And he befriended Letasia, he converted, he became a Roman Catholic, and he donated a lot of money to the cause of the Roman Catholics in Selangor. He contributed to building this building and also St. John's Institution. So, yeah, this is a later photo, 1947, of the Roman Catholic community in front of the building. And there are three prominent priests there. There's the one in white is Father Monsignor Parisod. So in the history of the Roman Catholic in Kuala Lumpur, Father Parisod, I don't know whether I'm pronouncing his name right, is very fondly remembered. He died 3 years after this photo was taken, 1950. But a lot of the development of the church activities was mooted by him. Back to Father Letasia just now. Sorry, I forgot. Let's go back to Father Letasia. Apart from riding his pony everywhere, he actually helped a lot of the mistreated girls, ladies who were brought in and maybe forced into prostitution. He provided them shelter. He would help them and offer them shelter at the church compound. There was not just this building, there were other buildings. And so those are the kind of contributions by individuals that aren't really shared, spread, because we're always in focus on the development of the place, because there's more history written about that than the issues and the challenges of women or the other smaller groups in the areas. There's a lot of stories where in the newspapers, people, ladies, men would commit suicide, they'll jump off the bridge and die because of the pressure of living in Kuala Lumpur. Maybe it was really a slum-like area, don't know. But there was, and even when I shared the map, the project about reclaiming the embankment road, the clerk of work who was involved got admitted into the hospital because he had mental problems. Yeah, yes. Mental awareness was an issue even back then, not just today. And so back to this photo, there's Father Monsignor, I think Michael Alcamendi in the middle. He was the Archbishop of Malacca and Singapore. And then when Kuala Lumpur's branch became a diocese in 1955, 1972, I think the structure was Malacca, Singapore together, and then somewhat because of the formation of Malaysia and Singapore left, they split. They eventually split the structure in 1972, and he became the first Archbishop of Singapore. And then Father Emily Fernandez, also, he was the vicar who replaced Father Parisod in 1950, also very prominent in the St. John's church history. So this building, like I said, has been reinstated. And when we were looking into Bukit Nanas, of course, we were trying to locate the old Istana building, the old technical school building, because we know from the old maps that there was meant to be an Istana built for Sultan Abdul Samad at the site of Sultan Puasa or Raja Mahdi's stockade. And then we know that the Istana was built on that site. And then we know that he didn't want to move to this side. He didn't want to move to Kuala Lumpur. He wanted another Istana, actually, in Bukit Petaling. It's not like he didn't want to move into Kuala Lumpur. He wanted another Istana. And the Bukit Petaling, where about where Confusion School is today was one of the proposed sites but that project didn't follow through. So in this photo, I saw a glimpse of what would have been the site of the old museum. The old museum became the technical school. The technical school eventually became University Technology Malaysia. I'm from University Technology Malaysia, so I'm interested. Very, very selfish reasons to do research. But as I said, Magan and I, we set up the team to study what we like. and then while researching, and we were introduced to the Roman Catholic Archbishop's office when we were doing the Jalan Bukit Nanas study. With DBKL, there was these focus group discussions, so we got to meet a lot of people. And they shared this photograph. This is from 1955 during the Corpus Christi procession. And then diorang pun didn't realize that, oh, I actually have a photograph of that structure that we've been looking for. So we don't know how much this building has changed from the original museum building or Istana design. But there's not much records about renovations to this building, except that towards 1950s, it was demolished, or 1960s, it was demolished to build the St. John's Primary School. At that point, St. John's Primary School was the biggest primary school building in Kuala Lumpur. Nevertheless, the structure is from the early 1900s period or late 1890s. You can see the columns, the brick columns, and then all the timber walls in between. If you do go up to Bukit Nanas, the Archbishop's house is at the end of the road. It was a JKR house, Public Works Department quarters, built sometime in 1908, 1910, and it's as per original. One of the very few remaining timber structures from the earlier period, from the 1900s in Kuala Lumpur. Okay, so this is a sketch map. It was produced in the 1975 St. John's Institution's commemorative something. They celebrated something, so they produced a book. But someone had drawn a sketch map of how that area was in 1904. That someone must have been about 80 years old or 90 years old. And from here you can see that it was a community. There was a catechist house. And St. John's Institution was built by the LaSalle brothers, but on the land owned by the Roman Catholic Church. So until today, although it looks like it's separated, but they still sit on the same land. And that's also a nice relationship that has continued between the church and education, right? And then you can see there, the old, mata pun tak nampak dah. Kejap. Old museum. Old museum. So the old museum, from the records, tales, don't know, was what was meant in Istana. And then I think in mid-1910, 1908, somewhere there, or 1906, it was relocated to the Museum Negara site. Yeah, it was another building. And so when that building was bombed in 1940s, they built the current Museum Negara building on that same site. So the museology history in Kuala Lumpur started somewhere, but it developed. It had a period at Bukit Nanas. Yeah, it had a period. Yeah, it started at Mr. Klein's house. So nice. Where did our museologist start? In my house. So he was a collector and he kept everything like under his bed or something. Okay, so this is the very, very much like you guys, right? I'm sure you have a lot of collections in your house under your bed. You can start your museum. Okay, this is from the 1910s, if I'm not mistaken, 1913, and it shows how that site developed. You can see the school, the St. John's School. Yeah, maybe kind of a pointer. Yeah. Church Street. And I said from the riverside, right? Okay, at the landing, and then you walk, la 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 la, and then you go up to Bukit Nanas Road, and you reach the church. Now, last time this road was private. It's only today that it's made a public road. So the church compound started somewhere here. So this we know because I was involved in identifying the fire hydrants, and there weren't any fire hydrants. And it's because in the past, fire hydrants only until your property. Yeah. So those are the like it's infrastructure, but it gives you hints on how areas were managed or who owned what. So this was the Roman Catholic Church, and then the St. John's Institution, and the Big Padang, which they still have. And then the old Roman Catholic cemetery was around here. In the 1980s, it was developed. They built up their office, a new parish house. Their parish house was here. Of course, it became too small, right? So they had to move it within their compound. And they exhumed the cemetery. I think they moved it to the Chora Cemetery. But at that building, there's a niche, and they've kept one of the tombstones to commemorate that it was once upon a time a burial site for the Roman Catholics. And the tombstone that is displayed there today is of a Chinese person and a Tamil person. To just show the community, who were the community, right? So the Tamil Christians, Tamil Roman Catholics, and the Chinese Roman Catholic. Anything else you want to know about this area? I forgot to show. That's the fire brigade at the triangle. Okay, and then this is the in 1935, and the setup is about the same. The telephone exchange was already built. This is Museum Telecom, and then back then the road, there was already a road. It was more accessible. When the new high-rises and all are constructed, it somehow blocks the original fluidity of the access. Okay, and then here you got a view from the Sultan Abdul Samad side. You can see the Masjid Jame dalam rimbunan pokok-pokok kelapa, Malacca Streets here, St. John's Institution, the technical school, because it became a technical school. And then one other landmark on Jalan Bukit Nanas is Lok Hall. Lok Hall was a house or a mansion owned by Alan Lok, the son of Lok Yu. He and his brothers actually went into the cinema business, and I think the company evolved to become Golden Screen Cinemas. The house his mansion was like described so cantik, like most beautiful house in town. And then obviously you can see the house because it's on the hill. But it was demolished to build AIA building. However, they've kept the entrance. So there's a really nice decorative gate entrance on Jalan Bukit Nanas. It's very random. You don't know what he's doing there. But it used to be the gate into his house. Okay, and then in 1955, they built this structure, the cathedral, and then the old church became Tadika Fatima. Siapa Tadika Fatima? Tak ada. Okay, masa I kecil adalah my friend's Tadika Fatima. It was one of the best Tadika or kindergarten in town because it offered a different, like a modern kind of syllabus, and they all had brown uniforms. And so eventually they moved out. But you can see the big Padang at the back, St. John's School, and then what was here before all the high-rises were constructed. And then you have now the Gudang, now the Gudang right here. Some people would remember the Boom Boom Room. In the 90s, it was a club. Okay, and then this is Father Michael Okomandi when they opened the church, the cathedral, in 1955. Yeah, so I'm ending with this photograph because it summarized a bit of the area that Magan was talking about, and then the cathedral area, the Bukit Nanas area, and don't forget, we are here. I'm going to pass it to Magan.
Hello. Hello, yeah, can hear right? We are now going to circle back to the beginning of Kuala Lumpur. This photo that you see here is Yap Aloy's Market, located outside here. You know where King George VI, the memorial clock to his coronation was located. Hello. Hello. Yeah, can you hear right? We are now going to circle back to the beginning of Kuala Lumpur. This photo that you see here is Yap Aloy's Market, located outside here. You know where King George VI, the memorial clock to his coronation was located. So right over here. Well, as you all know, again, you all know this very well. In 1881, in January 1881, there was a fire. Right? There was a major fire that destroyed a large part of Kuala Lumpur. Then in December 1881, there was a flood that washed away a lot of houses, including Yap Aloy's house. And after that, Frank Swettenham dictated that everything needs to be built, the whole town needs to be built in brick. So this market dates to after that rebuilding period. The story that you all might have heard is that Yap Aloy, he built a factory in Brickfields, what was then Batu 15, and that factory supplied all the bricks to rebuild Kuala Lumpur. Now that story is not quite true, and we'll look at the facts. Fact is that Yap Aloy, he built the factory in Brickfields even before 1881. It was built in 1878. At that time, the tin prices had gone way down, from around averaging from about 130. In 1978, it had gone down to 60. So, you know, it's less than half. So a lot of tin mines closed down. There was no money around. But Yap Aloy, being Yap Aloy, he wanted to keep his workers. He didn't want them to run away. So he had to find jobs for them. And what he did was he started other businesses, like the tapioca factory, planting tapioca, milling the tapioca in a factory. He even offered the government to metal the Damansara Road. So that's how he kept afloat. And one of his business ventures was to setting up a brick factory to export bricks to Singapore. The bricks that he produced in Brickfields were not for the local Kuala Lumpur market. It was for the Singapore market. At that time, Singapore was buying its bricks from Hong Kong. But transport from KL to Klang was very expensive. It was said that it cost as much to transport goods from Klang to Kuala Lumpur as it did from London or England to Klang. So, you know, so that transportation, because they went via the river or the Damansara Road, and that was very expensive. They had to put the bricks or even tin, whatever, it was put on boat, and the boat, it goes up and down, right? It takes a long time to go through. It took, like Mariana pointed out, 3 days. 3 days to get from Klang to Kuala Lumpur. And that was why the railway line was put. But so his business failed because of the transportation cost. It was just too expensive. It was not cost effective to produce the bricks here. But the tin market rebounded the following year, so he was a happy man. He didn't have to worry about money again. But he left a legacy in Brickfields because that brick factory paved the way for other bricks. Let's first see what Swettenham has to say about. Now I can barely read. He has established a brick field and kiln, and already produced a large number of excellent bricks and tiles to be sent out to Singapore market. The clay of which these tiles is made is of a peculiar quality, which enables them to be made of at once thin and light, while they are stronger and more durable than any ordinary tiles. Okay, so Swettenham has got very good a review of the bricks made by Yap Alloy, and a lot of it to do with the clay as well. And this clay was taken from brickfields. It was locally taken from brickfields itself. So that identified brickfields as a good place to make bricks. We come back to this photo simply because it's a nice photo and I don't have anything else. So you can look at it while I talk. And what was I going to say about this? Yeah. Okay. So after the 1881 fire, Frank Swettenham first he experimented with corrugated iron for the roof of new buildings, but this was not practical. It was expensive. So he dictated everything needs to be rebuilt in brick. And in brickfields, 15 factories, brick-making factories turned up, were operating, and this is according to Gallic. And once the rebuilding was completed, these factories closed down, factories in brickfields. But around KL, there were other factories as well. Like I remember reading somewhere, and I cannot remember where, but Yap Alloy says that there was a brick factory next to Yap Alloy's house on Market Street. So not sure exactly where. Then there is this Selangor Government Gazette for 1889 that says that there were 33 brick fields working at the close of 1888. 33. And 27 continued to be working until end of 1889. Where they were located, not very sure where the rest of them located, but the report also says that out of those that had closed down in 1889, they were forced to close down by the government because I think the government wanted the land for development. Two of them were the oldest in town. Two of them were the oldest brick factories in town. One of them belonged to Tambu Sami Pillay and was located where the hospitals were. The other belonged to Chuyok and was located adjacent to the parade ground, the Taman Merdeka. Not too sure exactly where, but there were 33 brick factories around. So if anybody wants to go and investigate the location of these three, please let us know the results later on. Yeah, let's... Okay, remember we said that the factory in brickfields and all the other factories, they were producing bricks for the private sector, for houses, for shop houses and all. The government contract, for government buildings, it was contracted to two men, Hill and Rathbone. How come their names are there? Yeah, Thomas Hill and Ambrose Rathbone. This photograph shows the two of them with Frank Swettenham and his wife. The 1889 map of Kuala Lumpur, and you see Pudu Road. If you stretch your eyes, you may be able to see Pudu Road listed, and you will see Pudu Village. But let me highlight it. Pudu Village is over here. Yeah, Pudu Village is over here. I've enlarged it. You see two streets there, Rathbone Street and Hill Street. These roads were named after the two of them. Their factory was over there. And their factory had to be removed, was demolished when the Pudu prison was going to be built. So that site is now Lalaport site. Let's take a look. So we said that in 1889, most of the brick factories, or all of the brick factories in Kuala Lumpur had closed, brickfields had closed down because the rebuilding exercise was finished. But then another phase of rebuilding started in the 1890s, and it started with Bangunan Sultan Abdul Samad. And what the state engineer Spooner did, he set up a state factory, and you can see that labeled. A state factory in Brickfields, what is today New Central, to supply bricks and other building materials to build Bangunan Sultan Abdul Samad because it's much cheaper. Okay, I can barely see this, but never mind. This was a brick that was found during the restoration of Bangunan Sultan Abdul Samad. You can see this brick in the gallery at Bangunan Sultan Abdul Samad. And so this is evidence that the state factory, the public works department, they supplied the bricks to build the Bangunan Sultan Abdul Samad. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. A big round of applause. I always enjoy working with Magan and Mariana. I leave them for a year or two and they come back with new discoveries. So now, before we open for question and answer, we need to wrap up by 12 noon. I just want to highlight that at the entrance, we have the KL Festival Discovery Pass. Please scan where you can check in and collect points and redeem partner awards. Yep. And you also can check on what's happening throughout the festival. And also, just a quick announcement. Hang on. Yes, we also have the QR code for our feedback, and please scan and let us know whether you like it and what you'd like to hear. And also, more importantly, I'd like to share that Badan Warisan Malaysia is currently undergoing an ongoing roof restoration project at the Rumah Penghulu Abu Saman Heritage Centre. Now this is about over 100-year-old house. It's been standing at our grounds for about 30 years, and it had won the UNESCO Award for Cultural Heritage in the year 2000. But after 30 years, it's in dire need of repairs. And as part of our continuous conservation efforts, we are raising additional funds to support the repair works needed to preserve the building. We also thank Think City for contributing quite a sum, but we also need much more. So if you like to support this effort, contributions can be made through this link. We also have it on the standee outside, and so please do support us in terms of preserving this heritage building. So on that note, there will be 2 mics on the other side. Please come forward and yes, Chris, there's a mic over there. Carry on, yeah. Thank you.
Easy questions, please.
Thanks.
Yes, I think it's working.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Okay, thank you, Johan, and thank you, both of you, for a really engrossing exploration of KL's history. I've got a couple of quick questions. I don't think I'm imagining things, but when you talk about disappearing cemeteries, I can recall a Christian cemetery behind the Railway Administration building. Yeah. Are you aware of that? Yeah. I just wondered, so I'm not imagining it. so I'd love to know a little bit more about it. The other question I have, I hope I can ask 2 questions very quickly, is about Kampong Atap. Because there's something mysterious about Kampong Atap, you know. If you look at all of the old maps of KL, it ain't there. You can't find it. I presume it must have been there because it was called Kampong Atap. And then suddenly, in the 60s and 70s, it hit the limelight. You got the original head office of MAS and Shell were both there. And then it kind of just sort of faded away again for other completely diverse reasons. But so the question on Kampong Atap is, do you know much about the history and why it's almost invisible in early maps? Was it just too far out of the city? And how did it start? Or was there something there that held back the development of Kampong Atap? Thank you.
You can take the first one. I'll take Kampong Atap. I can take Banning Chapel Cemetery.
Yeah. The cemetery, yes, the cemetery is labeled on all maps. You will see it definitely labeled. It was a Protestant cemetery, and one person who was buried there was Captain Harry Sayers. His wife is the one who purportedly gave the name Spotted Dog, Theodora Sayers. He was commissioner of police, and he was killed by a seladang. Seladang is a bison, right? What cow or a bison? Can't remember. Anyway, he was killed by seladang in Pahang, and he was a very popular person. So when he died, buried at a cemetery, he had the largest procession ever seen at that time in Kuala Lumpur. So yes, you're definitely right. There was a cemetery over there and a church opposite as well. I'm not sure where the cemetery moved to. I'm not sure. Cheras.
Yeah.
So we should go and look for Sayers in Cheras. Yeah, but
Yeah.
the church moved to Walter Grenier Road.
The Imbi, I think the Imbi Chapel at near Walter Garnier Road is the successor to the Vanning Road Chapel, and then part of it was, I think a lot of it was exhumed and relocated when they wanted to develop the Masjid Negara site, Masjid Negara building. Now, Kampung Atap. So Kampung Atap is really easy. No, it's lost because of the river straightening. So there are a lot of mentions, in fact, in the earlier notes, that there were a lot of bridges between Kampung Atap and the other side of the river. Now, when they built the railway station, the second and currently third railway station building, there's a bridge, right, from the railway station that crosses over. It used to be known as Sulaiman Bridge. Today it's Jalan Sulaiman. That actually in the old layouts led straight into Kampung Atap. And then it also connected to High Street. So you could actually, the arriving point was actually the train station. I mean, this is after the train station was developed and river transportation was no longer active, right? You would arrive at the train station, and then from there, if you go through Victory Parade, you'll go straight to the government office side. If you take the Sulaiman Bridge, you go to Kampung Atap or High Street, and it was very well connected. In the 1930s, they had to, there was a flood mitigation, a big major flood mitigation program. So a lot of the settlements or the Kampung Atap, portions of the Kampung Atap back then were relocated because the big chunk was where they were, by the river. And then what was left or developed further were the shop houses of Kampung Atap. So the 1930s, it has started disappearing. And with the Kinabalu flyover, it totally just disconnected Kampung Atap from its original connection to the river, to the train station, and to High Street. So in Kampung Atap, there was Lembu Cow, where they butchered, the main butchery center for cows was there in Kampung Atap. So there was a lot of activities, and unfortunately, the river straightening removed a lot of the original area. Yeah.
Thank you. Any more questions? Yeah, please. Yeah, come forward.
I have a question about the old photos, the map, right? Because I'm interested is, were they done by the British? Could be local, right? So did they took the photo, you know, or they have a whole archive? Did they have a whole archive of what was the history? Or these are just personal collection members or personal of the British people? Can you highlight more about
Okay.
it?
So for the official photographs, they hired either Lambert. They hired companies. There was Nakajimaya, there was Lambert. There were like main photography. They offered main photography services, but within the government offices, they also had photographers, kind of like in-house. And I've come across some appointment letters, and the photographers that were hired were Chinese, mostly Chinese. Yeah, mostly Chinese, the names. But we don't know how much role they had. Maybe they took projects, maybe they took site photos. In the Public Works Department, before they embark on a project, they have site survey photographs. So the survey office did have in-house photographers, but most of the ones you see online are the official ones. That's by companies that were hired by the government.
Thank you. Can you come to the mic here? You need to come over to the mic, please. Yes, come over to the mic. Yeah.
I have 2 questions about Bukits. One is, are there a lot of nanas at Bukit Nanas? And I remember there was a chapel or a church next to BBGS, Bukit Bintang Girls' School, But somehow a lot of people can't remember that chapel of the church. Do you remember the name?
Yeah.
Thank
So
you.
maybe you can take the nanas.
Then that's very simple. Selangor Civil War. Well, during the Selangor Civil War, they purportedly planted a lot of nanas because it prevents the enemies from climbing up. You know, the nails of the nanas.
And
they're
don't
very
forget
sharp.
they didn't wear shoes.
Yeah, at that time. So, you know, they prevented them from coming up.
Yeah. So that's from that event. And I remember that church. So the church was there, I think, until late 1990s. And it stems from the Vanning Road Chapel. I think I was told by a member of the church that from that chapel, Vanning Road, it went to Bukit Bintang, right? And then the Bukit Bintang Girls' School is attached to that chapel. I think I think now it's still referred to Imbi. Yeah, yeah. Yes, Imbi Chapel. Yeah. To the Imbi Chapel today. Yeah.
Yeah, carry on. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
Hello, Assalamualaikum.
Yeah.
I'm quite interested with your old picture of KL prior of the building of bangunan Ustaz Samad. But I'm interested with the Masjid Java Street. Can you share to us when it was built and how they demolish the building and who is the qari'ah of that masjid? Thank you.
Okay. I'll take that one. So there was a letter written in 1910s when they had to, or 1900 something, when they had to request for compensation. And in that letter, the committee members of the mosque mentioned that this mosque was built about 30 years ago by Haji Samad, who founded this mosque. So 30 years ago from that 1900s is 1870s lah, kan? So based on that evidence, we can say that 1870s they constructed a mosque. Haji Samad was the leader of the Minangkabau community. So he was Minang, not Mandalay. And then he was a businessman, and he also was very, not opportunistic, but very savvy. He bought a lot of land, property, and it was inherited by his son, Haji Taib. And there's a Jalan Haji Taib near Choket. That road is named after him because his property was there. Now, Haji Samad, the Haji Othman, these are two important names in the history of the Muslim religious associations in Kuala Lumpur. And he came from Batubara, Sumatra, an area near Rawa. So a lot of the information about him in the archives are mostly about land, because he bought a lot of land, and then when the government had to widen the road, they had to acquire from him, and he was quite persistent in getting the best of the highest value. So there are notes about, so he purchased one lot just next, between the bridge and Masjid Java Street. It was called Java Street Mosque because it was on Java Street. And then the rate that the government was offering him was like maybe $600, and he was asking for like 1,800. But eventually they got negotiated. So Java Street itself, it was only extended to meet Batu Road in the 1880s. So if you imagine a landing point on the right side of on the east side of the river, if you remember the Gyan Singh building, that's about where that mosque was. And then it being one of the higher structures at that time would have represented the community that lived in that area. And when they had to do the foreshore reclamation that I mentioned, they also had to widen the roads because it was to have fire breaks, because the fire incidence was too often. So they imposed Frank Swettenham, apart from making it compulsory to braille with bricks, he made it compulsory for every block to have a maximum of 12, and each block had to be 20 feet apart. And this is the same guideline that is applied today. The fire break is 20 feet. And so they had to acquire, for infrastructure, the land where the mosque was built, and then they exchanged it and built Masjid Jami instead. But Masjid Jami, they said, okay, we're gonna reconstruct, but we don't want to reconstruct in your Sumatran style. It has to be very prominent. It has to relate to the government office style on the other side of the river, and that's why you have a Mughal-looking mosque. So the mosque was built in 1909, but its history is goes back to 1870s, the establishment of Masjid Jami.
Thank you. Can you come to the mic, please? Oh, sorry, there's one here. Sorry, just.
Hi, thank you. So I just want to ask, around the Market Street and Clark Road, initially there were like shop houses, right? Those like neoclassical shop houses. Were those actually like government buildings? Because, as you said, those part of the river is usually for government quarters. So those buildings, were those like public or were those private? Because there's the Lok Chow Kit Emporium over there. So yeah.
The area that's now occupied by the Lokyu building, they were private. They were the owners. There was Yap Aloy owned part of the land. There was Chu Yok, the guy who built the theatre in that theatre street is named after. He owned part of the land. He owned some of the land, and there were a few people that owned the land. Some part of it was government, but some part on the other side was government. But the one on the Lokyu building site was private. So there was a mix. There was a mix of private and government.
I'll just add to that, because remember I mentioned that they planned it to be a new town. Before the government offices were built there, they were intended to be commercial lots, private lots. So that's why there were shop houses first. And then after that, when they decided, oh, government buildings should be there, they had to buy back the land from the owners. So one example is the old post office site. So that site itself had a shop house structure already, owned by Lokyu, and it had like original Chowkit.
The Chowkit Emporium was originally located where the General Post Office is.
Yeah, and
So
then the government bought it over.
The government bought it over, and they compensated. They compensated with the current Emporium, but only for a short lease. So that's why I don't know whether for a short lease. So I'm not sure whether he owned the land or it was on lease. It could have been on lease as well on that side, not outright owning it.
Yeah. So just a hint, that's why a lot of the buildings are owned by federal government, but there's two sides that is owned by Selangor State. It links to the public original ownership.
Thank you. Over there? Yeah, please.
Check. Okay, good morning or good afternoon. Just something that piqued my curiosity for a long while, the Central Market. It's been like etched on the stone that the year it was built, the building as it is right now, was built in 1888. But I'm quite an ignoramus, but according to what I can see, it's a very Art Deco kind of building.
Yeah.
Could it have existed as it is right now in 1888? Thanks.
Yeah, thank you very much. I've been telling everybody that that building does not date to 1888. It dates to 1836 or, 1936 or around 1930s. Hello? Yeah. What happened was, you saw Yap Aloy's Market, right? That building. That was at Medan Pasar. Then when he died in 1885, they moved the market to the current location. It was an open air market at the new location. Then in 1888, they gave it a structure. So they built a new structure for it, and that's why the 1888 date comes about. Although the market had been there since 1885. Yeah. Then the Art Deco building dates from the 1934. 1934 or around about 1930s. I think it's 1934. So
No, the 1930s,
1930s,
37, yeah.
yeah.
But because it says established 1888, so that's why like some sites,
Yeah.
the history of the establishment is longer than the history of the structure.
Of the building, yeah. But you're right, the building does not date to 1888. It's the market dates to 1885.
Thank you. So we need to wrap up, and the last two short questions. Yeah, one here and just one more after this.
Hello, Nabil here. Just very quick question. You mentioned that on the east side of the river was mostly the Chinese and Asians community, and then the west side of the river was the Muslim and I guess Malay community. I was wondering where were the European migrants living at the time, especially in the 1880s, before Bukit Tungku was a thing. Yeah.
No, what I mentioned was on that side was mostly Chinese community. The northern area was the Muslim community was on the northern area, and then the British, they came over. The European communities was on that side, on the west of the river.
So they would, from that side and beyond, Federal Hill, Parliament Road, there were like government quarters.
But there was one exception actually, Batu Road, where you had Eurasians, you had Europeans, you had Chinese, you had Tambusami Pillay. So it was a very multiracial road, that one.
Okay, one final question before we close. Yeah, anyone? Yeah. Okay, so if there isn't any, please, if you haven't joined Badan Warisan, please do. You can join at the front counter, and we have these two QR codes, one for the feedback and also for the donation to Rumah Penghulu Abu Seman. And don't forget the Discovery Pass to scan, yeah? So we have another talk in the afternoon on early Malay settlements in Kuala Lumpur. Don't forget tomorrow, Yap Malloy at the KL Selangor Chinese Assembly Hall. And the following week, we have a talk on Chow Kit. And also, very interestingly, for the first time, we're hosting a talk on the Asal Usul Orang Asli Kuala Lumpur. It will be in Bahasa Malaysia, as that's actually their lingua franca. Yeah. So do check out the lineup, and a big thank you, a big round of applause to Mariana and
Thank you so
very
much.
Thank you.